Welcome to the Emotional Eating Unwrapped podcast. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, an emotional eating and weight loss coach for women looking to fall in love with eating, create healthy attachments with food, and lose weight sustainably. Hello, and welcome to another new episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, and today we're diving into a topic that is everywhere right now. It's fuzzy, it's emotional, and honestly, it's way deeper than we think. And if you've been on TikTok or Instagram lately, you've probably seen this trend where influencers are quote unquote coming clean about their cosmetic surgeries. They're naming their surgeons, they're listing their implant sizes, and they're sharing before and after pics. And on the surface, it seems like progress, right? Like finally there's honesty where there's honesty in a world that often profits from perfection. But I feel like if we dig a bit deeper, there is a question, there is a theme that still sits kind of heavy on my heart when I look at this, seeming transparency. And the question that I'm thinking as I'm navigating this new trend and this new way of being really open about the surgeries and some of the body optimizations that influencers are doing. I'm looking a little bit under the surface, non-ironically, and I'm just like, is this transparency really helping us feel more secure in our own skin, or is it just adding another layer of comparison and obsession? Right. And it's nuanced. It's really complex because, on one hand, there is a certain safety and transparency. There is a certain security in that. But what are the subconscious implications of that? And that's really what we're going to talk about today. So if you've ever found yourself spiraling after one of these, real posts, today's episode is going to be for you. I know it's not our typical episode about some of the emotional triggers. It's not our typical episode of some of those obvious emotional triggers when it comes to food, but this is really an important thing because I have really seen this type of social media more often than I ever have before. So let's start. Let's get into it. So the reason why this episode came up is because I was scrolling Instagram one night, and we all do it. So we all scroll. I scroll, and I saw a clip of Kylie Jenner replying to a fan about her implants, right? And I think I might not have seen the original clip, but I saw maybe somebody who posted about it, and then I went down a bit of a rabbit hole and found more information about it. And I realized that what happened was that a fan had asked about her implants, and Kylie herself just, she just responded herself, and she named the size, she named the style, she named, I think, the descriptions about the implant, even the doctor, and so many comments flooded in. So many comments flooded in. Some comments were giving her flowers for being real. They were just, cheering her on. Others were asking for details. A lot of people were tagging their friends, saying this is the inspiration I needed, which is probably how I ended up seeing the clip. And when I saw it, I really had a mixed opinion, because I have nothing against plastic surgery at all. Nothing against it at all. But I had this split feeling, and a part of me thought wow, that's so refreshingly honest. Good for her, right? wow, how great to just be totally feel, not that there should ever be any shame, but like to just kind of be open about it, right? Like like it's regular, right? We're normalizing it. But then the other part of me was like, you know, this might light a fire of comparison that's more deep and a little bit more unobvious than we've ever seen. Because here's the truth about transparency like this. This type of transparency, it doesn't cancel out the toxicity that's in the underbelly of it all when the focus is still on the body as a project, right? So it's like it's a double-edged thing because her expression that's transparent is refreshing. But the underlying substance of the expression, I felt like the message underlying is still about the body, it's still objectifying, and it's still kind of saying that the body is something we need to like optimize and fix and in this way. And again, like we talk about with weight loss, when the motivation is always the most important thing, but not everybody is attuned to their motivation. And so that's why these things on social media could be, end up being triggering, and how it could end up becoming toxic because of how individualized every woman and man even his relationship is with their own body, and how every person internalizes this type of social media in their own life. And so in some level, this transparency just repackages the same old message with a more woke kind of new bow, right? Like a more normalized, less secret, less shame-filled new bow, right? Like here's how to be better, right? Like here's how to be better. And so when influencers share their surgeries, there is an empowerment element to it. And in some ways, it is a step. It is a step up from pretending like they just woke up like this, right? It is a step up from that because they are being open. They are saying like, I'm not perfect. I do things um, to enhance myself, basically. But here's, like I said before, here's where it can get tricky, is that transparency without critical thinking can turn into glorified tutorials, right? When someone shares their implant size or tags their surgeon, the subtext underneath is not neutral, right? It's not just, this is what I chose for me, right? The subtext is, here's how you can look like me too. I don't think that's what the influencer is overtly saying, but that, I think, is the message that's being received by many. And psychologically, that's really powerful because our brains love blueprints, right? It's one of the reasons why diet culture is so successful. It's one of the reasons why macros and meal plans and diets are so successful, right? Because when life feels uncertain, the promise of a fix creates dopamine surges. We think, oh, if I just follow this blueprint, maybe I'll feel the way she looks, right? She looks really happy and confident. Maybe I'll feel that if I just do that, right? Maybe I'll feel that way. So even though what's happening on social media with all of this transparency feels like honesty, it often keeps us anchored in the same old belief that your worth lives in your appearance. And so the ideal and that belief hasn't died, it's just gotten more sophisticated. And now here's when it hits home for so many of us. What happens inside us when we see this stuff? Maybe you've noticed it right in yourself. You see a post like this, and suddenly there's this like little voice in the background, like, oh, am I behind? Like, should I do that too? Like, should I get an eye lift? Like, should I get a implants? Should I, get filler? It's like, it could be any of these things, right? Like, should I do that too? Like, all of a sudden it's comparison, right? Like, well, what about me? Right? All of a sudden it doesn't just become about that person. Wow, she looks so happy for her. It's like, should I do that? And so even if you have zero interest in surgery or injections or anything, it scratches that old wound, the one that says, something's wrong with me. I'm not enough. And when that wound opens, food, the food addiction, compulsion behaviors often rush in. Right? And it's not because you want implants and you're not getting the implants, or you want injectables and you're not getting them, but because the entire conversation, the entire stimuli that you're receiving reactivates shame, comparison, and a sense of being less than. And so this is what I call the comparison control loop. Okay, you feel inadequate, right, based on something that you process, usually from social media, outside yourself or something, right? You reach for something to soothe, whether it's food, scrolling, or your next, planning your next diet, right? Whatever the blueprint is that you are gonna try to grasp onto. Then comes the guilt, right? Then comes the restriction, maybe even another binge, right? So, and then the cycle keeps spinning, right? Like, you feel bad about yourself, you try to fix it or escape from it. Then some emotion arises, whether it's, guilt, restriction, something that cuts you off from your sense of connection to you. And then the cycle keeps happening. I remember what it felt like to be stuck in the cycle of emotional eating. I tried every diet out there, counting, tracking, restricting, but nothing ever worked. Food controlled my life, my thoughts, and I constantly felt guilty after eating. But once I learned how to heal the emotional triggers behind my eating and trust my body, everything changed. I stopped obsessing over food, the weight started coming off naturally, and I found real freedom in how I ate and lived. So, I created the Sober Eating year-long mentorship to help other women experience the same transformation. So you can stop battling with food, you can lose weight without deprivation, and you can feel confident in your body again. In this mentorship, you'll have access to my proven nervous system rewiring method. You'll have access to live coaching with me, weekly accountability, and a community of women who truly understand your journey. You'll also have free access to my signature programs, the Emotional Eating Solution and Decoding Permanent Weight Loss, valued at $2,000. Click the link in the show notes to explore the mentorship today. You don't have to do this alone. I'll be right there with you every step of the way. So this is even why so-called positive body content, like an influencer being so unapologetic, which is totally in their right about their body stuff, enhancements, can be a trigger, right? Because it reminds us of the hierarchy. It reminds us that in this culture, bodies are still currency, right? Bodies are still currency. And so here's the deeper layer. Even when influencers are being real, the body remains at the forefront. The body remains the stage. And if you think about it, right? Even when influencers are being so like open and oversharing oftentimes about themselves, a lot of times it does have to do with their appearance. Because think about it. How often do we see them, women influencers go viral for talking about their emotional boundaries, right? For talking about their spiritual practices, right? Rarely. What gets engagement? A lot and most of the time, right? What gets engagement? Before and after photos, right? Confessions about weight, procedures, glow ups, right? And so when we measure vulnerability by how much someone exposes about their body, we reinforce the idea that our value is still tied to how we look. Even when the conversation claims to be about self-love, self-acceptance, neutrality. And if you're healing from emotional overeating and you're really trying to create a healthy attachment with food and your body, consuming this type of content can tip you back into obsession really quickly, right? Obsession and compulsion really quickly, because it tells your nervous system, you're not safe until you fix this, right? It tells your nervous system, like, now you're like your next level of satisfaction is if you change how you are and you do this. So what do we do with this? Right now that we've named all this stuff, we've talked about this, what do we do with this? How do we engage in a world that profits from our insecurities without getting completely swallowed by it? And so here's what I want you to remember. You don't have to judge these women. You don't have to villainize these women, right, at all. Everybody has a right to behave and take action with themselves as they please. So we're not speaking negatively about any of this stuff, but you, the women and men that are listening to this episode today, who have different motivations and have different struggles, as you consume this content, I just want you to start to come at it with a bit more of a reflective lens, a curious lens, and realize that you have the choice not to internalize these choices and actions as aspirational. And the way that you do this is, when you're consuming this content, you take a pause and ask yourself, does this piece of media make me feel more at home in my body or more like I have to fix it? Right? Ask yourself, am I scrolling for, connection and ending up in feeling like I'm comparing myself and ending up in comparison and feeling unworthy, or, am I doing that? And then the last question is, whose voice gets louder in my head when I see this, when I read this? Right? Is it the world or is it my own voice? And so when the answer feels heavy, right? When the answer feels like you're more disconnected, you feel more like your head starts spinning, like you have to fix yourself. When you feel, when you feel just like the voices that are other than yours get loud, that's your cue to come back to you, right? That's your cue to come back to your needs, your values, your definition of beauty and worth. And that's the work, right? Continuing to refine your, your internal culture, right? Knowing yourself more. What are your needs? What are your values? And maybe part of your values is enhancing your body with some of this stuff. And like I said, it's not even about that. It's about what is about, do you have inner authority with your inner world when you are consuming this content? And are you coming from a place of agency? Right? So you want to keep coming back to your needs, your values, your definition of beauty and worth. Right? For some of you, you might say, I do feel at home in my body, right? I do feel inspired, and that's great. But if you don't, be honest about that. Okay, because real healing isn't about replicating someone else's blueprint. Right? It really is about reclaiming the right to be sovereign in your own skin. And so the more that you build trust with your body, through emotional regulation, through consistent self-care that's, about understanding your needs, your values, taking action that respects yourself, whether that's with other people, with food, right? When you do that, the less power these narratives will hold, and you might be able to really just consume it as something that's an interesting thing, right? For her, right? An interesting thing for that woman. And you don't have to internalize it or personalize it about you. Okay. So here's the key takeaway that I want you to hold on to for today, right? Just because someone shares the detail about something doesn't mean it's the deeper nuance. Okay. Being transparent about something is not the same as being free. It's not the same as, it's not the same as being like completely, it's not the same. Okay. Freedom comes when you take your power back, right? Freedom comes when you don't outsource your opinions about yourself. When you don't outsource your inner, your inner feeling of confidence. When you start rooting in something that's completely unique to you, that's unshakable about you. And that's your inner compass. And so you have to build that inner compass, because that's when you become free, right? And then everything else is kind of like an add-on, but it doesn't impact your core. Okay? So that is all I have for today. I do have a really special announcement, though. I'm really excited about this. We are going to be starting a Be Well by AK monthly giveaway. And this giveaway is going to be a free one-on-one session with me. And the way that you can enter into the giveaway is you leave us a nice review and a nice rating on Apple or Spotify. You take a screenshot of that. You can either DM it to us at Be Well by AK on Instagram, or you can email podcast@bewellbyak.com. And at the end of the month, we'll begin this in August. At the end of the month, we will randomly select a winner to get a 60-minute one-on-one private coaching session with me for free. So if that is something you're interested in, I would love to meet you. I would love to support you in this way. Please enter to win the giveaway, and we'll be doing it every month. So if you don't get to it this month, no problem. You can do it next month as well. But we so appreciate you listening to our shows every week. Please like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Like and subscribe there as well. And until next time, I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating Unwrapped.